The night the world almost stopped spinning began with a storm, one of those dark, furious storms that seemed to tear open the sky, as if fate itself had decided to make a statement. The city glowed beneath it, every glass tower reflecting streaks of lightning, every shadow trembling with secrets long kept. And within that storm, two figures stood quietly on the deserted rooftop of an old film studio. Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo, two souls whose connection was as undeniable as the thunder cracking above them, yet as forbidden as the love stories the world refused to let them live. The wind tore through Xiao Zhan's coat as he turned toward Yibo, his eyes glowing with a mixture of fear and longing. He looked like a man ready to run, and yet unable to look away. Across from him, Wang Yibo stood perfectly still, the rain soaking his hair. His expression unreadable but his gaze sharp, like he was studying each beat of Xiao Zhan's heart. They shouldn't have been there. They both knew that. Their paths, though destined to cross, were supposed to remain parallel, never touching, never daring to merge. But destiny had a habit of mocking rules. The rooftop lights flickered as lightning arced across the sky. For a moment the world seemed to freeze, capturing them in a single frame, two silhouettes drawn together by something stronger than reason. Xiao Zhan swallowed hard, trying to steady his breath. He had always been composed, always gentle, always careful. But tonight, his heart was waging war with every rule he'd ever obeyed. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered, though his voice cracked at the end. Wang Yibo stepped closer. "And yet," he said softly, "you waited for me." Xiao Zhan closed his eyes. That was the cruel truth. He had told him not to come, warned him that everything around them was tightening, watching, controlling. But he had still come to the rooftop because some part of him hoped, desperately, foolishly, that Yibo would defy the world for just one more night. And Yibo always did. The sound of rain softened as the storm briefly eased. The air between them grew heavier, warmer, charged not with electricity but with unspoken words. Xiao Zhan opened his eyes again, and this time he didn't look away. Yibo's face softened at the sight of him. There was tenderness, adoration, and an almost painful protectiveness. "I can't keep pretending we're nothing," Yibo said, voice low, steady yet trembling beneath the surface. "Not when every time I see you, the world stops making sense." Xiao Zhan felt something inside him collapse. He had held himself together for months, smiling for the cameras, speaking carefully in interviews, keeping every emotion wrapped in silence. But Yibo's honesty was a blade, slicing through all of it. "Yibo," he began, but the younger man shook his head and took another step forward, until they were only inches apart. "You think I care what they say? What they threaten?" Yibo whispered. "I care about you." That sentence did something irreversible. Xiao Zhan felt his breath hitch, felt the rooftop tilt beneath him, felt every wall he had carefully built tremble. He wanted to hold that moment in his hands, protect it, freeze it like a fragile piece of sunlight. But reality was already coiling at the edges, ready to strike. "They won't forgive us," Xiao Zhan said, voice shaking. "They're already watching. They're already twisting stories, creating traps, whispering things." "I don't care," Yibo said again, but this time more fiercely. "You should," Xiao Zhan insisted, stepping back, but Yibo caught his wrist. The contact was a spark that shot through both of them, stopping the world for a heartbeat. "We can't burn everything down just because we—" Xiao Zhan tried to continue, but he couldn't finish the sentence. The word love hovered between them like something dangerous. Yibo stepped closer again, refusing to let him retreat. "If the price of loving you is fire," he whispered, "then let it burn." The wind roared. The storm crashed back with full fury. And Xiao Zhan felt his resistance crumble, because this was the truth he had buried so deep it almost stopped existing. He loved Wang Yibo. He always had. From that first accidental laugh they shared on set, from the late-night rehearsals, from the stolen glances, from the moments the world didn't notice but their hearts recorded with painful clarity. His heart knew it. His soul screamed it. But the world, oh, the world around them was a cage wrapped in roses, beautiful but suffocating, glittering but cruel. A sudden lightning strike illuminated the rooftop. For that instant, everything was white. Yibo's eyes, Xiao Zhan's trembling lips, the rain between them like shards of falling glass. Then darkness rushed back. Xiao Zhan finally let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Yibo. If we keep going like this, it'll destroy you." Yibo's grip on his wrist tightened, but gently, not possessively. "If loving you is destruction," he murmured, "then at least it's honest." A tear slipped from the corner of Xiao Zhan's eye, mixing with the rain. He hated that Yibo could read him so effortlessly. He hated that his heart felt alive only in moments like this, close enough to dream, far enough to break. He reached up and touched Yibo's cheek with trembling fingers. The younger man leaned into the touch as if it were the only thing keeping him grounded. "You deserve freedom," Xiao Zhan whispered. "You are freedom," Yibo answered. And with that, the last of Xiao Zhan's restraint shattered. He pulled Yibo into an embrace, tight, desperate, full of love and fear and the knowledge that this moment might be the last safe one they ever shared. Yibo buried his face in Xiao Zhan's shoulder, arms wrapping around him with a fierce tenderness. For a while they just held each other, two silhouettes tangled under a storm that seemed to cry the words they couldn't speak aloud. But fate was cruel. A door slammed open behind them. They broke apart instantly, too fast, too violently, as if the world itself had yanked them apart. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell. The rooftop was no longer theirs. Their moment, fragile, dangerous, beautiful, was slipping away. Xiao Zhan wiped his face quickly, trying to compose himself. Yibo straightened his posture, eyes sharpening. They both knew what it meant. They both knew the price of being found here, together, under circumstances no one could explain away. Yibo took a step toward him, small, nearly invisible, but Xiao Zhan shook his head ever so slightly, eyes pleading. Not now. Not when they were inches from losing everything. The footsteps grew louder. Xiao Zhan forced himself to turn away. His heart felt like it was splitting cleanly in half. Yibo reached out for a moment, fingers twitching at his side, wanting to pull him back, but he resisted. Because if he didn't, everything would collapse. Xiao Zhan walked toward the opposite side of the rooftop, pretending to be someone who wasn't drowning inside. Yibo stood rooted to the ground, chest heaving, jaw clenched. The door burst open. Voices filled the air. Assistants. People who had no idea what they'd almost walked in on, what they had nearly witnessed. Xiao Zhan gave one final look over his shoulder. Just one. And Yibo caught it instantly. It was a look full of heartbreak, full of promise, full of a love the world would not understand. Yibo's answer was silent, a soft nod, a vow made without words. The storm had not ended. If anything, it had grown fiercer, as though the sky itself had felt the moment between Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo and decided to rage on their behalf. Rain fell in sharp lines, slashing through the air, blurring the city lights into streaks of gold and silver. On the rooftop, the tension lingered like smoke, heavy, warm, impossible to escape. Yibo remained where he stood even after Xiao Zhan disappeared down the staircase. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He simply stared at the door, chest heaving, lips parted as if still trying to breathe in the warmth of the embrace they had just shared. His fingers twitched by his side, remembering the shape of Xiao Zhan's wrist, the softness of his touch, the trembling fear he had tried so hard to hide. But the fear wasn't what haunted Yibo. It was the truth beneath it. The truth that Xiao Zhan was breaking, slowly, quietly, alone. And Yibo couldn't stand it. Minutes passed. Maybe many, maybe few. Time felt strange in moments like these. The voices from the stairwell faded. The rooftop grew eerily still, save for the wind pounding against the rusted beams. Finally Yibo moved. He clenched his fists, grounding himself, forcing the storm inside him to settle. He wasn't going to let this night end like that. He rushed toward the stairs. Meanwhile, Xiao Zhan leaned against the cold wall inside the stairwell, his breathing uneven. He had tried to walk away calmly, But as soon as he was out of sight, his legs gave out. His heart was pounding so hard it felt like a warning. Dangerous, reckless, loud. He pressed a hand over his chest, as though trying to quiet it. Why was love such a terrifying thing? He had always been careful, always cautious, always thinking 10 steps ahead. But every time Yibo looked at him like he was the only person in the world, his heart betrayed him. It wanted to run toward Yibo, not away. It wanted to risk everything, consequences be damned. But he didn't have the luxury of wanting. Not in their world. Xiao Zhan took a deep breath, straightened himself, and prepared to leave the building. But just as he reached for the next stair, he heard footsteps. Fast, determined, familiar. His heart dropped. Xiao Zhan turned sharply, eyes widening, but before he could speak, Yibo grabbed his arm and pulled him into a narrow alcove hidden between 2 concrete pillars. The sudden closeness stole Xiao Zhan's breath. Their bodies were mere inches apart, breaths mixing, hearts pounding hard enough to echo in the small space. The storm outside rumbled like a warning, but Yibo ignored it. "You can't just walk away like that," he said, voice low but trembling with restrained emotion. Rain dripped from his hair, running down his jawline like silver trails. Xiao Zhan looked away, but Yibo reached up and gently guided his face back, fingertips brushing his cheek in a way that made Xiao Zhan's knees weaken. "I had to," Xiao Zhan whispered. "They were coming." "So what?" Yibo shot back. "We were talking. We were existing. We weren't doing anything wrong." Xiao Zhan's laugh was bitter, soft, broken. "In their eyes, even breathing too close is wrong. And since when do we live for their eyes?" Yibo countered. Xiao Zhan stared at him, really stared, and his heart twisted painfully. Yibo didn't understand, not fully. He was fearless, bold, ready to take on the world. But Xiao Zhan, he carried scars the world didn't see. He carried memories of battles fought behind silence. "You think I'm afraid for myself," Xiao Zhan said quietly. "But I'm afraid for you." Yibo froze. "I can handle it," he insisted. "No, you don't understand." Xiao Zhan's voice cracked. "I can take the rumors, the pressure, the whispers. But if something I do hurts you, if being near me destroys your future," he swallowed hard, "I wouldn't survive that." Yibo's expression shifted, something fierce, protective, and heartbreakingly soft. "You won't ruin me," he said firmly. "You make me stronger." Xiao Zhan shook his head, overwhelmed. Yibo exhaled sharply, frustration mixing with longing. He gently cupped the side of Xiao Zhan's neck, thumb brushing the damp skin. It was the lightest touch, yet it sent a shock through both of them. "Tell me you don't feel it," Yibo whispered, voice barely audible. "Tell me none of this matters. Tell me you don't." "Don't," Xiao Zhan cut him off, eyes burning. "Don't make me lie to you." Thunder cracked overhead. The truth hung between them, raw, dangerous, undeniable. Yibo stepped closer until Xiao Zhan's back pressed against the cold concrete wall. Their breaths mingled, warm and shaky. The storm hissed through the half-open rooftop door, wind swirling around them like a wild spirit urging them forward. Xiao Zhan's resolve was crumbling. He could feel it, slipping like sand through his fingers. "Yibo," he whispered, voice trembling. "We can't." Yibo leaned forward, resting his forehead against Xiao Zhan's. "Then why does it feel like we already did?" Xiao Zhan's eyes fluttered closed. His hands rose slowly, hesitantly, until they rested on Yibo's chest. He could feel Yibo's heartbeat, fast and strong, beating as if calling his own name. The world outside roared. The lights flickered. The air crackled with electricity. Everything in Xiao Zhan wanted to surrender. But the footsteps from moments ago replayed in his mind, the reminder that nothing between them was truly safe. He pushed gently against Yibo's chest, tearing himself away with visible agony. "We have to stop," he whispered. Yibo caught his wrist again, so gently, so carefully, as though afraid to hurt him. "No," he said. "We have to stop being afraid." Xiao Zhan felt his heart lurch. The sincerity in Yibo's voice, the certainty, was overwhelming. But before he could respond, a sudden booming voice echoed down the stairwell. "Is anyone still up here? We need the lights off." They froze. Yibo pulled Xiao Zhan deeper into the shadows, shielding him instinctively with his body. His pulse throbbed at Xiao Zhan's throat as the footsteps grew louder, closer, dangerously close. In the dark, pressed against Yibo, their breaths sharp with fear and longing, Xiao Zhan realized something. This wasn't the end of the story. It wasn't even close. Their love was forbidden, but it was alive. And alive things fight. The footsteps passed. The door slammed shut. Silence returned. Slowly, Yibo loosened his grip, eyes searching Xiao Zhan's face. "We're going to figure this out," he whispered. "Even if the world tries to stop us." Xiao Zhan's eyes softened. Broken, hopeful, terrified. "Yibo, what if the world wins?" Yibo shook his head and touched his cheek again, gentle and sure. "Then we'll make a new one." The storm continued to rage outside, but inside that shadowed corner, a different kind of storm was brewing. One built of courage, longing, and a love that refused to die quietly. Because no matter how forbidden their story was, it was theirs. And it was only just beginning. If you enjoyed this continuation, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more dramatic stories and updates.